Today we finish up our series on real. 2 weeks ago we talked about the real life as a generous life. It's not a selfish life. Last week we asked ourselves, what's a real church? And is this that kind of place? And how do you feel about this place? And today we're talking about the real you. Is the you that you are inside the same you that you live out there? And I warned you a couple of weeks ago that this would be the week to skip because we were talking about generosity, but since you didn't, you're now my prisoners, right? Some years ago, Dan and Joni Horn tried out our church at the old building, and they came on the Sunday when the pastor was talking about giving, and they didn't come back for years. Then when they visited again, it was October again, and guess what? They came, the second time they came was years later on that same Sunday. Well, they finally stuck and figured it out. But if you're visiting today, I want to invite you to come back, and I want you to ask yourself a question and kind of look at this moment today and ask yourself, how does this church treat this topic? How do we go about talking about this topic? Because I think that is an important thing to consider when you're looking for a church home. Let's stand for a scripture reading. This is from the book of Philippians. Paul is writing. He's actually closing up the book's he's bringing it to an end. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. Whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Dear friends, this is the word of the Lord. May God send His Holy Spirit to bless it to our hearts as we gather in His name today. Please be seated. Well, Halloween is this week. It's a time to pretend. It's a time to dress up. It's a time to wear masks. And we have a picture I want to show you from when I was 14. Okay, take it down so we don't scare the kids anymore. But my mom dressed me up as a mummy to go to a costume party at the Christian church. And it's actually a great memory of my childhood. I was actually not a child. I was more of a youth. But I won the contest for the best costume, and there was a dance there that you could dance at the Christian church, and I got to dance. Some gal would dance with me. How about see how exciting that is? To the long version of Indigata Davida, all 17 minutes of it. Very, very exciting. But if you're like me, I mean, my memories of Halloween were just so wonderful. It was a great time to be a kid. I mean, in the early 60s, my parents turned us loose in the neighborhood with a pillowcase, and we'd go door to door, and everybody was home back then. People didn't like close up shop on Halloween. Everybody was there. Everybody in the neighborhood had great big old candy bars and all sorts of wonderful things, and we'd come back just laden with goodies and dump them on the floor and go out for a second run, you know. And while we were gone, my dad would pick through and pull all the Hershey bars out of our candy, and I never have done that to my children, but the Christian faith is different. The Christian faith really invites us to be real, to let God see who we are, and to try to learn to live a life that is the same on the inside as on the outside. Jesus told a famous story about a cup. He was talking to the Pharisees. You're not the Pharisees, but he was talking to them, and he's making a point that sometimes when we live, the outside of the cup's all clean, but the inside of the cup's dirty. And of course, the point is that God invites us to live a life where we're the same on the inside and on the outside. The Apostle Paul is writing to the Philippians. He's saying, put it into practice. All this stuff that we've been talking about, all this stuff that you've been thinking about, all the things that I've taught you, it's not enough to just think about them or have feelings about them. He's saying, put them into practice. actually live what you believe in your heart? Today we ask a simple question. Who are you? What is the real life, the real you like? Who are you? Who am I? What really defines you? What do you really love in this life? Are the things that define you, are they things? Cars and homes and things that we like to collect? Or is it your faith that defines you? Is it what you believe in your heart that defines you? The Bible promises lots of blessings and joy for those who choose to live a life where we put God first. When we think about giving, whether it's time, talents, treasure, do we give God the leftovers? Like, think about how you manage your time. I've got all these things I want to do, and I'll give God whatever time is left. Does God get the time that's left after I do everything I want to do? And from a financial standpoint, do I make giving to God a priority, or do I spend the money that He's given me on all the things I want, and then when I look at what's left, say, well, what do we do? There's a blessing that comes to your life, and I mean, you can just feel this. Well, in fact, before we go there, we all know how crazy it is when our living out of our spiritual life is all based on leftovers, leftover time, leftover money, leftover effort. But we also know the joy, the wholeness, the excitement that we feel when we start the day, or we start the week, or we start the month, and we go, okay, here's this pile of stuff. Here's my time. Here's my checkbook. God, what do you want to do? And we order our lives based on that. Jesus invited people to live a life that's the same inside as outside. Paul invites his hearers to put into practice the things that he has taught. A word comes to my mind. I don't know if there are any math teachers here today. If there are, I apologize if I don't explain this quite correctly. But there are writers that talk about living a congruent life. And we have some turtles. There they are. Similar on the bottom, not the same size. Similar is different than congruent. Congruent, maybe a different color, maybe turn a little bit differently, but it's the same size. When we talk about living a congruent life, the idea is whatever's in there lines up with what's out there. And all of us know of lots of examples where we are not living congruent lives. I want to keep my car clean. Do you want to keep your car clean? But I don't do a very good job of it. I want to eat healthy, but I don't always do that. The Hershey bar thing really can be a problem at my house. Maybe you want to go back to college or get a degree or something, but you don't. I've wanted to get a doctorate in ministry for years, but I don't. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, I want to read more, but I don't. Maybe you want to give more to the church, but you don't. Maybe you have a parent that you want to visit, but you don't. All of us understand what it means when there's something we have a feeling that we could, should, want to do, but then we don't. And I was remembering a scripture from my youth. It's interesting that we don't always remember them exactly the way the Bible has them. And of course, most of what I remember is remembered in King James. And so when I looked at it in the modern versions, the verse is actually very different than what the King James says. And then when I looked at it in King James, it's even a little different than how I remember it. But this is the Jeff Brinkman version of the King James from Proverbs 23, where we find something, the verse that says something like, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. You might have heard that or something like that. And I'm thinking about this verse. Wouldn't it be nice if all the time what was in our heart was the same as how we lived? But sometimes it seems that that's not quite the case, because there's who I am and what I feel in my heart, and then when I actually get out there and I'm living it out, it doesn't always square up. Sometimes there is a tension in our lives between what's in our heart and what is in our head. I've told you the story before about my mom had this a dream when she was a young woman, and she's in the shower, and of course in the shower you're naked, right? Can't say naked, but I can say naked. She's naked in the shower, and her family, her brothers and sisters and her mom and dad are looking in the door, and the shower curtain's falling down, and she's struggling to hold it up so people don't see her nakedness. And sometimes I think all of us have felt this tension of there's a difference between what's in there and who I really am out there in the world. Shakespeare wrote and Hamlet said, "This above all, to thine own self be true. To thy own self be true, and then it must follow as night follows day. Thou cannot be false to any man." You know, there's an intention in our hearts. I intend to do this, but actually taking a direction, a step, is such an important thing in making changes in our life. We have a little video to share with you today that Amy Bartlett found out there. And what you're going to see in this video is a young man who recognizes the difference between what he thinks and what he actually wants to be, and some of the steps that he takes to change that. Let's watch.
Over the last couple of weeks here in our Facebook community, we've been talking about what it means to be a disciple, what it means to live like Jesus lived, and one of those core points is to see a need and meet it. And I think a lot of times we hear that and we think about the extraordinary things to show up in. We see major crisis or we see major needs and we think, man, we need to amp up and once a year do something amazing. And we forget about the power in the mundane or even the character that's grown in us when we get used to doing those things in the everyday. And so as I was thinking about that, I just wanted to share two things that I do to try and show up and meet a need in an everyday situation. The first is that I always carry $10 with me. I got tired of driving my car, riding my bike, and seeing people asking for money and feeling like it was a question that I didn't have an answer to, that it was almost an interruption for them to have a need, which is a very selfish thing to feel. And so now when I see someone asking for money and they're in need, I feel like I have an answer to that question. I've intentionally prepared myself to meet that need. So now I'm looking for it. I'm looking for opportunities to do that, to show Christ's love to them in a unique way. And the second thing is I've decided that I'm going to own being the guy that stops when I see car trouble. So if I'm on the highway and someone has a flat, or their engine's dead, or they need a call, whatever it is, as everyone else zooms by, I'm the one that slows down and pulls over, connects with them, make sure they're all right, make sure someone's coming. If they need a ride, I'll give them a ride. And I've just kind of decided that I'll be that guy who owns stopping and helping the people that I see. I can't meet every single need that someone has car trouble. I can't start a giant ministry to do that. But in the everyday, I can show Christ's love to those people in a really profound way. And I feel like it's an opportunity that grows character in me, grows my faith, it stretches me because I'm intentionally looking a way to live like Jesus in a way that I can do. And so today I think the challenge I want to give you guys is, instead of looking for something really big to do, what's something really small you can do consistently? What's an everyday thing you can do to show the love of Christ to somebody who's in need? And it's just a matter of showing up and knowing what you can do. For me, it's carrying $10 in my pocket and being willing to stop. For you, it could be any number of things. And so that's the challenge today. Find out how you can find a need and meet it in the mundane.
Having an idea about who you want to be and actually taking steps to be that person. This last week I spent a day in Princeton. You know, their pastor died a few months ago, and went up there and had lots of cups of coffee and caught up with people. And John Miller said, "I just want to know one thing. I watched your streaming service. I just want to know what happened to you." And I said, "What are you talking about?" "Where'd your suspenders go?" And I hadn't thought about wearing suspenders for years. But I always wore suspenders up there, and I wore suspenders here for the first couple of years until, it didn't work very well with my shape anymore. But I went home, and I said, maybe I'll feel more like me if I wear suspenders. And I got them out, because I've had them all these years. And my wife saw them and she said, "Don't you dare." So don't tell my wife, but just in case John Miller's watching today, to take steps to be what you really think. That's when we find success in life. The guy in this video had a plan. Jesus had a plan. He knew who he was, and it was just on the table every day. He didn't care what the Pharisees thought. He is healing on the Sabbath. He is reaching into the lives of broken people that everyone else is throwing away. Jesus is just loving. He is an authentic, congruent person. Think, the children loved him. What does that say about the kind of person that Jesus was? Children were attracted to him. Sometimes that works for me, and sometimes I meet people and I try to talk to their kids, and their kids go, "Oh, I don't think so," But Jesus was just absolutely loved because this love came out of him. He knew who he was, and he put it into practice. There is a great joy when we live our lives in a way that it's the same on the inside as on the outside. In fact, Paul, he's writing, the things that I've taught you, put them into practice, and what? And the God of peace will be with you. Well, we all want the peace. We all want the joy. We come to church hoping to get the joy and the peace, and a lot of times we don't have it because our lives are broken and incongruent. So what Paul's saying is, you know what to do. You know who you are. I've taught you these things. Put them into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Friday, I was at a lunch in Springfield for the Rainbow Network, and beautiful, beautiful Presbyterian church in Springfield on the campus, First and Calvary Presbyterian Church. And I wandered in the door in the foyer, and they had big posters up because it's October. And what are they doing? They're having their finance campaign, right? They're having their pledge drive. They're inviting their congregation to look at the stub inside and fill that out and make a commitment. And the title of their campaign, and I think we're going to have to steal this for next year, the title of their campaign is All In. And I just stopped and thought about that for a while. All in. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is a poker game. And we're Methodists. We can talk about poker, right? It's okay. Y'all have played poker. Let's just get it out on the table. There's this moment in a poker game. I've been looking for something to invest in. I've been looking for something to say, this is the thing. This is the time. I'm all in. Want to get this hand, whatever it is. And I've made many mistakes at this moment. But what do? You push your chips up and you say, I'm all in. You're announcing to everyone around the table that you are fully invested in this moment. It's a powerful picture, because certainly there are things that you can think about in your life that you felt fully invested in. Some years ago, we played a lot of softball around here, and the team I played on, I was certainly the worst player, but I played hard. I ran as hard as I could. I slid head first. Every Sunday I would come home from the game with strawberries and soak in the tub, and my wife would make fun of me. I love those guys, and it was so much fun to play. I was all in for a softball game. I think about my kids, and it's so heartbreaking to know that there are families, that there are children where the parents aren't there for them, and I certainly haven't been a perfect parent, but when I think of my kids, if they need anything and it's within my power to do it and healthy, I'm all in. Even though they're grown up and out of the house. I mean, I want to have their back. I want to be there for them. I don't ever want them to question the fact that they are loved and supported by their dad. And so I was in Princeton, and some of the folks asked me, did you like being here? And I told them a story. I said, well, they appointed me to Princeton. We drove up here in our 85 Plymouth Voyager, sky blue van with vinyl seats, Left the kids with Grandma. I had never been to North Missouri. Never been in a little town like this. And the drive from Bethany to Princeton is very remote. It's 3,000 people live in the county. You don't see many people anywhere. And we rolled into this town, and the buildings are falling down. On the square, the buildings were falling down. I had never seen anything like it in my life. And we met great people, and that was nice. But as we pulled out of town that day, there was a little bit of crying because I couldn't imagine taking my family to that place. Well, you kind of get your mind around that, and you believe that God's hand is in the call of the bishop. And so we went up there with a strong heart, and we had a wonderful 3 years. Absolutely wonderful 3 years. And then we had to say goodbye. And I will never forget, to my dying day, the day we pulled out from Princeton. The moving van was gone. My wife had taken the kids and gone, and it was just me and 3 or 4 couples from the church, and we were kind of cleaning up at the parsonage. And then it was time. It was time to go. And I carried my toolbox to the back of the van, put it in there, shut the door. Hugs, got in the van. I didn't get a block away from that house. And I started to cry for a different reason. It's 30 miles from Princeton to Bethany. I cried like a baby. I sobbed for 30 minutes. That may be the longest time I've ever cried in my life. Why? Because for those people, for that time, I was all in. So there's this place, Woods Chapel. You drive by it on the highway and you see the church with the green roof that needs to be painted. And you pull into the parking lot here and you walk into the building. What do you think about this place? Is this your place? Is this your home? Are these people your family? Today we are asking you not just about finances, not just about a commitment card, but also about your time and talents. When you think about this place, will you see the hands of God at work here and invest yourself in the life and ministry